Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. Today, we are talking about something that every woman will experience at some point, but that no one prepares us for menopause.
That's true. Nobody hands us a manual. And then suddenly, one day, randomly, you're going to ask yourself, why am I overheating? Why do I feel like my brain is melting? Is it hot in here or is it just me?
Which brings us to today's guest, Carin Luna-Ostaseski. Did I do it right?
Yeah, you
Yay!
crushed it.
And she has literally turned that question, is it hot in here or is it just me, into her latest venture, Hot or Just Me, a platform dedicated to making perimenopause and menopause less confusing, less isolating, and way more supported.
Carin is no stranger to breaking barriers. She was the first American woman and Hispanic person to start a Scotch whiskey brand. That is so cool. I want to hear more about that. So clearly, she's all about disrupting male dominated spaces. And now she's taking on menopause, giving women the tools and resources they need to own this transition instead of dreading it.
Honey, welcome. We are so psyched to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa and Carrie. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, I love it.
Awesome. So let's start with a big topic. Why is menopause still so taboo?
Oh,
You
gosh.
talk openly about perimenopause and menopause, apparently. So many women feel like they have to suffer in silence. What made you decide to take this on?
Yeah, I think the taboo part is just it's so multifaceted, right? It's generational for sure. I'm sure for you as well, but growing up, it's not something that my mom and I ever talked about, right? Like perimenopause wasn't even a word in my vocabulary until a few years ago. And so it's not something that we grew up when we're learning about puberty and just sort of saying like, okay, you're gonna have this, very steep peak with your sex hormones through puberty. You'll plateau through your reproductive years, and then you'll have like this roller coaster up and down as you decline. So I think just not having, that kind of be part of our lexicon, if you will. And I think now, though, what's happening is that women are taking our health into our own hands a little bit more, realizing that our doctors aren't as informed as we thought that they should be about this topic, and we're finding our way to finding the right medical providers and support that we need, and then sharing it with each other, right? Like as women do, we have what we call like girlfriend medicine, right? We compare notes, we talk to each other. Is this normal? Is this happening to you? And then just being able to find ways that we can navigate some of these symptoms and not just suffer silently.
I love girlfriend medicine. I've never heard that before. That is awesome.
I
Yeah,
think
it
I
is.
heard one of your guests say cougar puberty. I thought
You're
that was fantastic.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Amy Picker, Cougar Puberty. I mean, I will say, and I think we said this in the pod, I have never, ever seen anyone go through menopause the way she has gone through menopause. It was crazy making for her and just felt like, I mean, every symptom you could get, she got. And so she was like you, the same way. She was just like, nobody talks about this stuff. She went to the doctor and the doctors blew her off. And yet half the population goes through this. And so
Hmm.
it's almost like we've got this little secret society once we hit our late 30s to whatever. And it is kind of imperative that we talk to each other about this stuff because nobody's
Right.
talking about it in the offices.
And the messaging around it is it's often really negative. Like it means you're done. It means like you're complaining. It's just like we become these bitter
Yeah,
older
the
people
mental
or
rage,
something.
the being a
But it's
Karen,
just,
like,
it's
yeah, I've
actually
heard it
like,
all.
yeah, it's just a transformation that I think if there was a lot more knowledge shared about it, it could be celebrated and embraced, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, like, we've earned our stripes, right? I say, like, my gray hairs is a journey of stories, right? Like being a mom, being an entrepreneur, going through so much in our lives, and just kind of embracing this age and doing it a little bit, more unapologetically, and not like it's to be hidden in shame. It's, we celebrate our kids when they go through puberty. You're becoming a man, you're becoming a woman, but then, as we're having this equally important transition, it's just sort of like to just kind of like hide it is not going to happen. No.
No, I that you're right. I never even thought about that. Yeah, there's actual like celebrations in some cultures around all of that. And the other thing that we don't talk about is how women are often going through menopause when their daughters are going through puberty. So that's a whole fun
I've got the
piece.
hormone household. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a hurricane right now. And it's so funny because like one day my daughter's just crying and I'm like, "Oh, baby, what's going on?" And she's like, "I don't know why I'm
Yeah.
crying." And she
Yeah.
just looked at me and I was like, she's like, "I'm just crying for no reason and I don't get it." And I just like, "Oh my God, here we are. I get this too. I know
Yeah.
exactly what it's like." And we could talk about it and, just sort of, have a shared experience like, "Hey, your body is changing, your mind is changing, your skin, your hair, your breasts, like all of these things are happening to you. And hey, they're happening to me too, in an equally different way. But I can
Yeah.
relate with sympathy and compassion more than just saying, like, suck it up or without
Yeah.
explanation, right? And so to come at it from that level of understanding, and the same thing for our partners, right? Like,
Yeah.
with testosterone declining through life and it being more of a gradual experience for them than it is for us, but just also having, again, just a shared, vocabulary like, hey, how is aging going for you? What are you feeling? Like, how's your mindset? Like, are you noticing like physical changes that you want to talk about too? Or, I felt this was happening for me. Did you notice that? And, just being a little bit more curious with each other.
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. All right, so let's break it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Perimenopause, menopause, that in the lexicon people sort of use these words interchangeably. I don't think I really understood it before going through it, but they're not the same thing. So can you
No.
explain what is actually happening in our bodies in
Yeah.
those two different time
Sure.
periods?
So yeah, as our sex hormones increase drastically, right, through puberty and then kind of plateau through our reproductive years and then have a decline in midlife, right? The estrogen and progesterone will start to kind of go up and down more violently, which is why we have some of these symptoms that kind of come up so quickly. And menopause is defined as the day that you don't have your period for 12 months, but many women don't know when that is, right?
Right.
For various reasons. And the years leading up to that day are basically known as perimenopause. That could be anywhere from 3 to 10 years for women. And there's a variety of symptoms that happen during this time in life. And women are unique, right? Like we all have them in different stages and different severities and different moments. And, some pass not at all. There's about 100 symptoms that have been identified as common symptoms. The 10 most common ones are irregular periods, right? So, your periods, if you do get them, will be maybe monsoons suddenly, or they're not at the same, same cycle that you always were regular before. Hot flashes, so that's the feeling of your neck, your face, your shoulders, your back kind of have a warm sensation. Estrogen is vital in controlling some of the temperature regulating parts of your brain. So your brain thinks it's hotter. And you're looking around stripping off your clothes or you've got no sheets on and your partner has like 20 blankets on top, and then your body wants to cool down, so hot flashes lead to some night sweats, right? So your sweat is trying to cool your body down. It can happen anytime during the day. I don't know why it's just night sweats as a term.
Right.
Insomnia, so waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to go back to sleep. Anxiety kind of goes hand in hand with that one. Vaginal dryness and low libido, again, and they kind of coupled at this time in life. Mood changes and irritability. We talked about like the meno rage or being a Karen, but definitely it's just like, being a little bit more triggered or angrier about things that didn't bother you as much as before. Joint and muscle aches, like weird little stiffness that you get, or those noises when you're like creaking that weren't happening before. Brain fog is another big one. So walking into a room and forgetting what you went in there for is kind of normal. But for me, I had a moment where I was driving my car and literally forgot which way I was heading. Like just had a moment of, oh, this is for real. And it took about 30 seconds of like real fear saying, what's going on with my brain? Like, and then realizing like, oh yeah, I'm headed to the car wash. No big deal. I'm okay. But it was a big,
Yeah.
like, a check of like, what's really going on right now. And then weight gain, you've got the muscle loss and the exercise that you did before not working the way that they used to. So that's more perimenopause, and then some similar ones again postmenopause, but coupled with more instances of urinary incontinence or frequency, just having to pee all the time, bone density loss, and then heart health concerns. So just quite a few symptoms there that are the most common, but then there's also some really random ones too. Like people will say phantom smells. So this idea that you're maybe smelling gasoline or, just something on fire or smoke, feelings of ringing in your ears, like there's also burning tongue sensation, like just kind of like phantom like pains in your shoulder. So there's just
Wait,
a
can we
lot,
go back to burning tongue? Because
right?
I have actually been experiencing that
Have
for
you
like
had
the
that?
last
So
month.
I haven't had that yet. So what
I
is it
didn't,
like for you?
it feels like my tongue is constantly burnt, like I have burnt it on pizza.
Wow.
That is crazy. I have
And you
never,
didn't, obviously.
no,
Like
no,
you
and
didn't.
I'm not kidding, Carrie. This has been going on for a good 6 weeks to 2 months. And
Wow.
I didn't even, I knew nothing was, I didn't think anything was wrong per se, but it's just like right now, like I can
Oh
feel it.
my
It feels
gosh.
like I burnt my tongue.
Yeah, so
That's crazy.
there's a list on Morphus, morphus.com, where they've compiled surveys of almost 5,000 women that have expressed their symptoms, and there's just basically a checklist, and I encourage people to go and just take the survey as well, so that you can help to add to the understanding about what the common symptoms are.
Wow.
I'm blown.
You know, I always understood it as like people will say, I'm going through menopause. Like you're going through perimenopause, you arrive at menopause. So it's either
Yeah,
like perimenopause or postmenopause. Like menopause is like the moment that you've
yeah.
arrived at. And
Yeah, or they'll say
once,
menopausal, which is like,
yes.
really? It's just kind of like it's an odd. So perimenopause, I'm happy that it's being more searched for, like, in terms of search
Mhm.
volumes, it's increasing. There's, more awareness, like perimenopause day and month, and, just kind of bringing attention to it as women do, of just, making sure that we all know that this is normal. This is happening to all of us, that there's nothing wrong with us, and that we don't need all these extra pharmaceuticals that we might be being like, shoved at us during this time in life because, we're not with doctors that fully understand.
Well, I mean, the term the change is still accurate because everything you just described is like changes in these things,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
and I think, obviously our cycles and pregnancy also are a little preview to that for later. Because like some of it, waking up sweaty reminds me of being pregnant or nursing and things like that.
Yeah. Well, there's also, I
Yeah.
think, these moments where, as women, we're kind of used to it. Like every 28 days, we have our cycle, we've got our mood swings, our PMS symptoms. So hormones have been a talk about, that for our whole lives, right? And for
Right.
men, it's just sort of like it kind of happens all at once. So it's the first time that they're really confronted with, what is it like a decline in fluctuations in hormones? What is that like, and what's happening to my body? So I think that's why sometimes, there might be that reaction of like midlife crisis, or, just sort of like,
Hmm.
going off the deep end suddenly, of just trying to figure out what's going on. And for us, it's sort of like similar, like we've kind of had these feelings before, but they're just really amplified, and there's new ones.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I think it is a thing that the fact that men go through it and that we've given it this cute little name of midlife crisis
Yeah, it's like, no,
is it doesn't serve them either,
not
right?
at
I mean,
all.
at all, because they don't. I think the same thing happens. Like men are feeling more emotional, and so
Mhm.
they're looking around going, "What on God's green earth is happening to me right now?" You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'll give us at least we knew this was coming at some point, even if we hadn't talked about it.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so 100 symptoms at least, and yet we've already said our doctors typically don't know a lot about it.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I'm
so
sure
if,
you've talked about this on the podcast, but the
oh
doctors
yeah,
in the U.S. only get like 3 hours of training in menopause during their residency,
Mhm.
which is ridiculous. And so, of
Get
course,
more
they're gonna
now, but still
yeah.
not enough.
So you're
They
like, you
definitely get
go
more.
in and you're like,
Yeah.
I've got anxiety. So they're like, oh, take this SSRI. You're like, I'm having trouble
right.
sleeping. And they're like, well, take this Xanax or something, versus just sort
Or
of like,
change your diet, or yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
exercise
it
more.
really it comes down to, as it does in so many ways, advocating for yourself
Yeah.
and not allowing a doctor to just blow it off, trusting your gut, trusting your symptoms. So, what would you suggest a woman should ask her doctor and be persistent with especially if they're feeling dismissed. And what do they
Yeah.
do if they are feeling dismissed?
I
Do they
think
go find another doctor? Like what happens?
I think the first thing is just asking your doctor, like, hey, are you menopause certified, right? Or just
Mm,
even looking it up. So I encourage people to go to a website called menopause.org. It was formerly the North American Menopause Society, and they have a Find Your Practitioner section where there are, I believe, 2,500 doctors who have taken the extra level of certification for menopause training.
That's great.
And if your doctor isn't, maybe just ask them, like, say, hey, are you the right person to talk to about this? Is there someone else in your practice that you recommend? And then, if there's nobody in your zip code on the results from that search on menopause.org, I encourage people to maybe look at telehealth. So there are some really wonderful resources like alloy.com, there's MIDI Health, and there's Evernow that all offer telehealth options, and most are covered from insurance. So just finding someone that gets it, right,
yeah.
is really important. And just, if something doesn't feel right in your gut, just kind of push back. So I think that that's really important. I
Yeah.
went to my doctor, the first one, and realized that he was just very much in the business of delivering babies, right? And so, spent all his career doing that and not a lot of focus in older women. And then finally, after the second doctor, and then eventually the third, was a woman who had gone through menopause. So I think what happens is a lot of these OBGYNs might be retiring by the time that menopause becomes something topical for them to
Hmm.
consider.
Oh, that's interesting.
A lot, though, that go into just for lifestyle, they go into GYN only because they
Yeah.
don't want to be like, delivering in the middle of the night. So you would hope that that would be such a cool requirement if that's what they're doing,
Yeah.
if
And I
they're
hope,
just gonna,
yeah, that they would know to keep going, right? Like it's a whole journey. Like see your patient through their lifetime, but also, go through the extra training if it's of interest, or just realize when you don't know, and just
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm getting a lot of women this age that are, showing these same symptoms. Like maybe it's time to send them to someone else.
Yeah. Love that.
um, okay, I want to shift gears just a little
Yeah.
bit, but we can always come back to that because the advocacy piece is so important and you're sharing such gold. I want to talk about we don't discuss this a lot here, and I mean, we do in certain ways, but not specifically around this. Like how menopause affects our relationships.
Mm,
Like how
yeah.
do we have these conversations with our partners, with our kids? Like you said, like my mom had to get a. Well, I don't know if she had to be like that. I mean, she got a hysterectomy, so she kind of felt like she bypassed some of that. So my sister and I were both kind of bumping around in the dark with like we didn't have that model with our mom. But how do we have these conversations with our partners and our families without making it weird or making them feel like we're suddenly a different person or
Or wanting
just
to murder them.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's why like friends that have gone through cancer treatments as well, they just suddenly go through menopause and it feels like in a month, right? Or like 2 weeks, like
Yeah.
everything happens so quickly, so that conversation kind of gets sidelined. For those of us that are definitely, in it for a long period of time, I think that first conversation is with yourself, right? Of saying,
Mm,
what do I need to be supported in these moments, and how do I want to approach these conversations with my children, with my partner, and with my workplace, and to be able to, first off, say, how do I want this conversation to go? What do I need from it? Is this, do I need advice? Do I need support? Do I just need to be heard and listened to, and just kind of let them know from the get-go. I think another one in just relationships in general is making sure it's the right time for a conversation. Just like that quote of like, if somebody's drowning in a pool, it's not the exact moment that you're going to say, hey, I'm going to give you a swim lesson right now. Like making sure it's like that they're ready for the conversation and like say, hey, I need to talk to you about something and it's important to me. So let's block off some time. And I need you to be present for the conversation. And then, what is it that you want to say, right? So, for your kids, it might be a mutual understanding, like what's happening for them. I've discovered some really beautiful books through the years called the All About You series from the American Girl Dolls, if you can believe it. They actually
wow.
published a series of books that are fantastic, and they're written in that old like Cosmo, like Tammy and Topeka style. Says like this is happening to her, like question nobody
Mm,
understands. And so it's really beautiful that it's written in a way that's it's accessible for kids and honest and kind of more bite size. And then so there's a set for younger girls and there's a set for older girls. And then there's also a series called Is This Normal? And another one called the All About Feelings book. And then for
mm,
boys, they have a series as well called Guy Stuff and Guy Stuff Feelings. And so it's not, meant to be like, let's just read this whole book at once, but it's more like, hey, what's happening right now? Is it a body change? Is it an emotional change? And to kind of go through that together. Um, and then, for your husband, I think it's really similar of how is it affecting our relationship, right? Is it a libido? Is it, emotional? Is it anxiety? Is it, just even just our environment, our home, like sleep situation and the changes that need to happen in our house to help support you during this time. And then I would say the same thing for your workplace. I'm
Mm.
looking for the right partnership right now to align with as a cause. So one of our causes that we give to is period.org. So helping young girls get access to menstrual products that will help keep them in schools and in sports and through their education. But I think a bigger one too, or not bigger, I'd say equally important is as we age, is our workplace supporting us? Are we
Oh,
able to regulate our own temperature when we need to in our office settings? Is if we're in a uniform job, the clothing that we're wearing, is it conducive to the body changes that we're having, like layering or breathable fabrics? Is it mental health breaks or, access to HRT and coverage with FSAs? And so just making sure that we have communication on all of the channels and setting up those conversations for success.
okay. I have to interrupt here and figure I
Yeah.
have to know, how did you get from making a whiskey to this? I mean, clearly, we know other people who got really activated, became activists around menopause when they
Yeah.
hit it. Like you said,
Yeah.
doctors kind of, the doctors we know, some of them same thing. But like, you are so well versed in this.
Oh, thank
Well,
you.
how did this happen?
That's so wild. It's like I think they call it scratching your own itch, right? Like this is a
Yeah.
problem
Yeah.
I had, and it's like there wasn't something out there, so I needed to have this in the world, and I wanted to help other women. This is my third act in life. I'm
Wow.
47. My first 17 years, I was a graphic designer and a creative director, so I worked for major media companies and then eventually Silicon Valley tech startups. And I was just staring at a computer screen all day long, and I was miserable by the end. And I was like, this is not what I want to leave behind in the world, is just other people staring at their screens. And not
Mhm.
coincidentally, I was going through a divorce at the time. And the way that divorces have a way of just kind of shaking you to your core and rethink your identity and who am I without this person? And I like what else is making me unhappy? And it was just it's like a burn the ships moment, right? Where I was
Yeah.
just like, I hate my job. I'm gonna get quit. But it took a while to do that. It took about 3 years before I finally saved up enough money to start my business because I was having a lot of joy over a glass of whiskey with people and really just having these like heart to heart, moment to moment connections in real life and taking your time and going slow. And I thought this is what I wanted to do with my life. And so eventually, saved up some money, worked a second job, and decided that I was going to crowdfund Sia, which is my scotch, on Kickstarter. And it made me the first woman in history to create a brand of scotch and the first Hispanic person to do so as well. So I was off to the
Unbelievable.
races, and the brand started, it was hard. I got like 80 rejections. Fundraising was extremely, I would say, impossible. And it was just like kind of brutal at first, but eventually the brand really started taking off. And I started a grant program to help support small business owners like me, women and minorities, to give them $10,000 a piece. So we've done $350,000 in grants to help small businesses
Wow.
and 6 months of mentorship personally to help them get resources and advice and support and community amongst themselves as well to help grow their businesses. And then about 4 years ago, the brand was acquired by one of the largest spirit companies in the world. So I got to work with them to help grow the brand, and eventually just found that I had, the 7 hours while my kids are in school all day long. I'm not taking as many work trips, and that's when the hot flashes started. And I was like, I think there's
Meant.
something here.
Yeah.
So yeah, eventually it was like, all right, here we go again. And this time around, as an entrepreneur, the inner critic and the imposter syndrome was less, right?
Good.
Like the first time around was just like deafening.
Yeah.
And this time around, it's like, oh, just shut up. Like we can do this. We've
Ah,
been here before.
Love it. Oh my God. Thank you for sharing that. I was
But it's like
dying
so
to know.
random, right? Like whiskey to
Well,
menopause.
is it though? I mean,
It's
I don't
so
think
cool.
anything's random, and I love whiskey. So I'm super down with this entire story.
Thank you. I do too. I just can't drink it at night anymore.
Right, right,
It's
right.
it's so rad that like it is everything we are all about. It's like listening to or paying attention to what's happening inside you and going with it. And then
Yeah.
the fact that along the way you made it possible for other women to do the same, just incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Oh, thank you so
Bravo.
much. Yeah, it was wild just not realizing like, hey, there's nothing out there. But then again, that voice is like, well, if it's not out there, it's because like for some reason, right? Like
Mm,
maybe it shouldn't be, or maybe people don't need this or want this. And it's like, is it, or are we just at a time now where we're just kind of waking up to the fact that there are other things that we can do for ourselves to kind of guide us through some of these and, just find a way to also help support women in the process, right? Women-owned businesses.
yeah.
The majority of the brands that we sell on Hot or Just Me are women-owned or women-operated, and then also just to have a give back that's a really important social cause.
Love it. All
Amazing.
right. Well, let's go back to menopause. I could talk about whiskey
I mean,
all
we could talk
day,
about
but
whiskey more.
well, maybe we'll come back on that. All right. So sleep.
Yeah.
Holy grail of life in general, but midlife in particular, right? And menopause is just like, ha ha ha, you're so funny that you want to sleep.
Like,
So what
yeah.
are some of your top tips for
Oh
getting a good
God.
night's sleep?
Yeah, so I really believe that sleep is everything, right? So
Yeah.
if you have a bad night's sleep and you could just think about your next morning and go with me. So you're groggy, you wake up, you're kind of moody and irritable, have an extra cup of coffee because you're tired, so now it's going to trigger some anxiety.
Mm,
You probably make bad food decisions. You skip the gym because you're exhausted, so now you don't get that endorphin boost. You get to work and you're like got like some brain fog and concentration issues, especially as the afternoon goes on. So you have another cup of coffee, and then it's time to be with your partner, and you're just not in the mood because you're exhausted. So all of these things, right? Like this domino effect. If you kind of
yeah.
like bring them all back and go in your way back machine, and if you just had a good night's sleep, like it means everything, right? So all of that could have been avoided. So I like to say, like, just how do you optimize for a good night of sleep? And so, you think about your habits, right? So we mentioned caffeine, cutting out that afternoon cup of coffee, maybe switch it to an herbal tea if so you can still have that ritual, right?
Yeah.
And then, alcohol, same thing, like, day drinking is fun. And then maybe just like, like special occasion, right? Nights, because it does really affect your sleep. And then you think about, your meal, right? Like a light, easier meal. Try not to have like a bunch of sweets at night. So like, that might like keep you up as well, or like chocolate with extra caffeine.
Yeah.
And then the same thing about your house, right? So what's your bedroom like? Are you on the side where the air vent is of the bed? Like I had to move. I was like the one side sleeper and I was like, no, I gotta now be this person that's close to the air vent. And then, your environment in your room. So do you have blackout curtains or maybe an eye mask to block out some of that light? If you have a partner that snores, are you wearing some earplugs to kind of drown that out? And then, your bedding, right? So do you have some cooling blankets or a cooling sheet or even just some temperature regulating pillowcases like some of the ones we've got on the site? And then what you're wearing on your body. So is it like a nightie that is breathable, cotton, fabric, or something natural? And then maybe it has like a T shape if you want some more skin exposure to your cooling sheets.
Mm,
Um, and then the same thing, if you wake up in the middle of the night, right? Like, how do you get back to sleep easier? So maybe it's a cold glass of water by the bed, or maybe you might listen to a yoga nidra uh, recording or YouTube, or maybe a calm story to kind of get you back to sleep. And so, what can you do to just really make sure that you've optimized for a good night of sleep? And then just this is a hard one too, but because I'm guilty of it, but just your devices, right? Like
yeah.
being on your phone at night just turns on your brain and then you can't turn it off. And so how do you like make sure that you know, maybe listen to a podcast or an audiobook instead to kind of still have that your phone near you, but just it's not activating your brain.
Love it.
Yeah. That's a tough one for me because I need to have a phone that's connected to a seizure monitor for my son. So we're constantly playing with that, like keeping the phone out of the room, but putting the monitor volume on really
Yeah.
loud,
Oh
that kind of thing.
gosh. Yeah,
It's a
or just
tough
same
one.
thing like we have, elderly parents, right? And so we want to make sure
Mm.
that our phone is nearby in case they call or for some emergency, we don't want to miss it. And so, how do we we make sure that the phone is nearby, but it's just that we're not like scrolling or,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
that blue light wake up thing is so real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about real, I want to get real about sex and how it
Mhm.
changes during
Yeah.
menopause. What would you like for our listeners? And we've talked about this here a bit, but I'd love to hear, kind of your wisdom around this. What are your recommendations for people to keep intimacy alive when hormones are on a roller coaster? Like Lisa and I have talked about this here many times. Like our libido went up, and then sometimes our husbands go down, and
Right.
a lot of people like no interest. Like the interest left the building. So, and obviously you mentioned some of the dryness and the other things that can happen for people. So, what is the kind of wisdom you're sharing
Yeah,
around
thanks,
that?
Carrie. So I was really surprised with our site. It's actually the vaginal dryness and low libido is the most popular section, and the most orders are coming from that section. So I think that women aren't talking about it enough. So I'm happy that we can talk about it here. I think an important thing is again your body, right? Like, are you hydrated enough? Are you drinking enough water throughout the day? Are you keeping your skin, your vaginal skin included, moisturized if it needs to be? There's a variety of lubricants that we have to help during sexual activity for dryness and discomfort. And we have a variety of vaginal moisturizers too, like coconut oil and water based. So depending on what your needs are. And then same thing about, pelvic floor exercises, making sure that you can get an increase in blood flow for sex. And this is kind of a fun one that I like to talk about as well. We also have a variety of vibrators and toys on the site as well, which makes it a little trickier to be able to advertise the site. But it's a
Oh, that's
shame that
interesting.
that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
But the part that I like to share about, I'm not somebody that can watch porn. I get like really uncomfortable, and then I am always like comparing myself and like thinking like my body doesn't look like that, or it doesn't do that, or I used to look like that, or so I get in my head a lot, right? And so what I've discovered through the years are some really cool apps. So one of them is called Dipsy, and the other is called Quinn. And they're erotic stories. So it's gonna go with me on this. But basically they're basic guy girl, girl girl, threesomes, like just different fantasies, right, that are taking place. And it's just you're listening to it, right? And the voices are beautiful and you get out of your own way. Like you're not in your head anymore about like, oh no, I'm like a little like feeling like too chubby today, or I'm feeling like, like whatever it is, like just like all the chatter and the noise that we have in our brains about why we're not going to have sex. And so what's cool
Mm.
about it is they're like, hey, well, why don't we just listen to a story instead? So it's not you're not shutting down your partner. You're not like, it's not a rain check. You're just like, hey, let's like, it takes the edge off. And it's kind of fun because it kind of like gets you there in the mood without like trying. And then
That's great.
it's really
Yeah.
fun. And there's again no pressure. And they also have like self-pleasuring stories as well, and just guided meditations, if you will. um,
Wow.
and then there's another series that I discovered that it was almost accidental, but it was while we were going through marriage counseling. We discovered a group called the Gottman Institute, and it's very
Oh yeah.
much about. Have you heard about it?
Oh yeah. I read a lot of their books.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot about like appreciations, and I could go into that forever. But the part that I want to share when it comes to low libido is they have an app for your phone called Love Decks, and they're basically cards, like, swiping of questions. And I think, as we age, we change, our partners change, our relationship changes, right? So to think that we know our person so well is sometimes a little naive. Like, who are they now, right? Like, what are they into now, or what's important to them now? And so they have some questions that you can ask each other, like when you're out on a date, like, and it's everything, right? Like, what's important to them? What are their goals? Their like, their fears, like that kind of stuff. But then they have this group of cards called the salsa cards, and those are fun because they come in mild, medium, and spicy. And so they're
That's
just
so
really like
cute.
fun thought starters of like what turns you on, because the mind is such an important sex organ, right? And so, just to kind of get you in the mood in a different way is really fun too. So we have all that on the site linked up.
That's awesome.
Love it.
I love the idea of we were just talking earlier about communication with the partner in terms of building, and so this is another level of it. And it sounds like you, as any given human, can decide what they're comfortable with, and they
Mhm.
could escalate it as they get more comfortable. So I really love that, and it's a new way of a new fun way of navigating through all of this.
Yeah, we actually had this other exercise that we did. I forgot what book that we learned it from, but basically, like, what are your turn-ons? And like rank them like from 0 to 100. Like, what really turns me on? And it could be anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then you share with the partner, right? Like you exchange notes. And this is kind of funny being like, I didn't know you like that. Okay.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I
All
love
right, let's
this.
talk about the site.
Yeah, because you started to talk about that. I'm wanting to go back there. I was really impressed when I looked at it. You curated some of the best menopause related products at Hot or Just Me. So what are your must-haves for getting through menopause and perimenopause with your sanity intact? Like, what are the? I'm gonna guess you've obviously you have some knowledge of these things that you recommend.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, I guess it just depends on what symptom seems to be bothering me the most at that time, right? So it's not like a always this one or that one, but like right now I'm like a little bit more triggered with hot flashes, and so I've been wearing my cooling jewelry.
Oh, cool.
So these are from a company called Hot Girl Pearls, woman owned and operated, and they're freezable jewelry, and they're beautiful. They come in different colors and
Nice.
different sizes depending on your wrist. Size, and you freeze them for about 3 or 4 hours. They last, maybe about an hour or 2 hours. And, if you are doing something outdoors, it's great, like gardening, or if you're playing tennis or golf or some outdoor activity. But for me, I just wear them in the house literally while I'm working. And they're great because they touch you kind of on your pulse points, your wrists, and like around your neck. And so that's also a wonderful one. And then there's a company called Become Clothing. They have a fabric that's a moisture wick technology, so it kind of like pulls the sweat from you and kind of converts it into cold and helps to kind of cool you down. And I'm like, I live in layers basically, like because I'm constantly taking off like a layer. So the tank top is great and stylish, and you could wear it anywhere. So that one's a lot of fun. And then, my cooling sheets is another big one, need that for sure. There's this other wonderful mask that I wanted to show. It's called Opal Cool. And again, freezable, but it's great for migraines, headaches, or just to kind of cool down. And when you freeze it, these change color, so it like it's been like activated, right? And you
Mhm.
can put it right on your skin. It doesn't burn your skin at all, so there's no like freezer burn. And yeah, just another wonderful saver.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I looked at it too. I definitely, after speaking today, I have to go back and
Thank you.
start
And
looking at more stuff.
we have some really fun bundles too. So like we've grouped products based on like needs, right? So there's one called Welcome
Mhm.
to the Club, and it has like a couple books, and it has, a gift card that you could use or give to a friend, and then also like a funny greeting card. There's also, stay cool and calm. We have a spice things up category, self-care, hot flash relief. So just kind of bundled by groups. We also have a quiz, like if you're not sure where to get started, for your age and your symptoms and what stage you're in. And then we have a pretty extensive resource library of articles, symptoms of perimenopause, how to tell the difference, tips about acupuncture, bone loss, HRT, and so much more. And then working on a services directory. So,
Mm.
like what kind of practitioners beyond just like doctors, but also like maybe it's acupuncturists, or maybe it's, people that can help you with hair loss. And so just making sure that build out a service directory for women as well.
I love it because
Amazing.
yeah, it's not just about like selling stuff. It's
Yeah.
about like the full sort of holistic, like how all the ways that you can help women get through this time. And I love the idea of sending it to a friend. So because maybe now you guys can build a little community around it for yourself and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I love most about everything you're saying and just your brand and everything about the site, it's like my favorite things about this time of life. Like it can be hard, but it can also be really funny and sexy and just and like connecting, right? For women and for couples. And so I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think it's really important to know that we're not alone, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. Like, is this normal? Why is this happening? Am I crazy? Like none of that, right? Like it's just that we're all in this together, that we've got each other. And that's in the same way. Like if there's something out there that women say like, hey, this should definitely be on your site, I would love to hear about it so that I can add it and check it out. And like a lot of the things that just, yeah, very very well vetted, but I want to make sure that I have a good collection. And by that same like way. I only have 5 sections of the site built out right now, and I'm working on urinary incontinence. I'm working on heavy periods, working on anxiety. So rolling out symptoms over the next few months as well.
Just a personal ask there.
Yeah.
Are you covering, or maybe you mentioned this already, osteoporosis or osteopenia and its relation
Not
during
yet,
all
but
that?
I definitely plan on
That's
it. I
me.
think it's okay. So we need to talk offline and get some more
Yeah.
details for sure.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
again, I think what's you already said it, but we shouldn't go through this alone. And yet women tend to do a couple of things. We tend to think, oh, I'm the only one going through this, or I'm gonna take care of it. And
White
we
knuckle
also
it. Yeah.
tend, right? And we also tend not to want to invest in ourselves in this way. We just think, well, again, we'll suffer through. There's some sort of something in our brains that, and neither of those things should be true. Like if going on your site, Hot or Just Me, and we'll get more information here in a second, if you see things on there that will make your life more pleasurable, whether it's sitting at work or it's in the bedroom, it is worth the money. You will not regret it.
Yeah, we have to invest in ourselves. And on that
100%.
same note, I am really happy to offer a discount code for your listeners and your audience. They get 10% off of their order using TTWK as their discount code.
Yay, thank you.
Of
Yay.
course.
All
Thank
of
you.
this will be in the show notes very
Yes.
much. But thank you. I'm excited. I'm
Of course.
definitely going back
Super
in.
excited.
Carrie, is there anything you want to add before we move to the song?
No, I mean, I'm so glad you brought up what you did because I thought this is going to be just weird to go back and bring up osteoporosis. So thank you.
Oh
'Cause I
no,
was like,
it's a pleasure. No, and it's it's also wonderful. Like as an entrepreneur, there's things that I know and things that I don't know, and I'm still learning. And so I want to make sure that I like surround myself with experts and the best like tools and products to help support women through all of these symptoms, right?
Well, you've
well,
clearly done that. I'm very
and
impressed.
I think what's so helpful when I think back to my own journey, and I'm married to someone who works in women's healthcare, so like I actually had, and have some health coach training, so it's not like I had nothing, and still, like Lisa and I both, like we have things that we're like, oh, that's what that was, right? And
Yeah,
Like burning
um,
tongue.
exactly.
right, and then some of your pain, right? Like some
Yeah.
of your joint pain and stuff. What I like about this is you might like somebody might just have hot flashes, but they might not be thinking like I wasn't like, oh, my grandmother had osteoporosis. I should ask for that. And I did many times and I still didn't get it. And then I found out I was in full osteoporosis in my spine. So like, or like mental health stuff. If there's someone in your family that might become really acute and you might like, that might be part of why you feel like you're crazy and you might just need to, like get a metabolic workup or get some
Yeah.
blood work done or any of those things. It's so helpful. You kind of want to focus on what you are dealing with, but to like look out at the landscape and go, okay, those are good to know. So if I see anything like that, there's actually something I can do about it.
Yeah, and of course, I'm not a doctor and a medical professional. I always
Of
encourage
course.
people to, talk to their doctor and also make sure that they're the right doctor for the conversation.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah, so helpful. All right, so this should not be a surprise, but the song you picked was Hot, Hot, Hot. Because I mean, I said this in the pods we've done on menopause before. I weirdly only have a hot flash, and they still happen because I think that's the other thing. You think, oh, you hit menopause and now all of it's gone. It's not gone, right? Obviously, I have burnt tongue, which I didn't know, and I still, even last night. But what's so weird is my hot flash happens somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock. I
Every
don't have
night.
it in bed, not every night,
Okay.
but it's like I had a sweatshirt on last night and I looked over at my husband. I was like, well, it's that time of night again,
Feeling hot. Yeah.
Yeah, it is so weird. So yeah, I love the idea though of reclaiming this phrase and also, as Carrie and I have said, like we could also be actually hot, 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 sexy at this age too.
Mm,
Yeah, I love that.
yes.
Yeah,
That's a great song. And I also just like the idea, it just plays in everyone's head when you hear it.
yeah,
It's so it feels like you're turning it into a celebration,
yeah.
that like this is an opportunity to feel alive and vibrant and evolving. So I love
Absolutely.
that.
I love it. Well, we will throw it on to season three's playlist. So,
Oh, so fun.
all right. Well, Cuttings, thank you so much for joining us. I when I saw your information come through, I texted Carrie and I was like, I cannot wait to talk to her. She seems like such a fucking badass, and you have absolutely lived up to my expectations.
Well, thank you both so much.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
it's
so
been a
needed.
pleasure.
And I love coming at it from different angles. You know, obviously, as we said, we've talked about it before. You know, our first time talking about it, we joked because I did not want to make this a menopause pod, and yet it is just, it's so important. And it's important for our listeners who aren't there yet, as well as the ones that are going through it. So such an important conversation.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate for anyone listening, no matter where you are on the peri journey or the post journey, or even if you're just curious about it, because we do have a lot of young listeners, check out www.hotorjustme.com. You will not regret it.
And then use TTWK, obviously the things we know, for 10% off. So thank you so much for offering that to our listeners, for sure. Any
Thank you
final
so
thing
much.
you want to say before we wrap?
No, just a deep gratitude to you both for sharing, my story and so many stories of women during this amazing time in life. So thank you for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for
for
being here.
sure. And to that end, anyone who's listening to this and thinks this would be a great episode to share with a friend or a family member, please do, because, you know, we would love for menopause to be out there, out and proud, and not be a taboo subject anymore. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back next week. Thanks again, Carin. So nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you.
You too.
Bye.